Iron Man has the capacity to absolutely dominate the skies in Marvel Rivals. He's a high-speed character in a straight line, just like a good old American muscle car, while having great options for single target damage as well as splash coverage of an entire crowd. But his kit has its limits, and his ceiling can only go so far. So, in this video today, we'll be showing how to best leverage his strengths and mitigate his weaknesses so you can have the most success possible with Iron Man. Now, a couple of disclaimers I always like to get out of the way up front. One, I make advanced guides, which means I don't make a guide on a character unless I have at least 20 hours of actual gameplay logged on that hero, which is why I have now like 13 Lord heroes. This video will also have very, very little practice range footage, almost none, because I think it's best to show the hero in combat on actual maps against actual players actually trying to kill me. And lastly, if you've been enjoying my guides, thank you so much for your support. Feel free to consider subscribing just to my playlist for guides only, like if you want to just get notified only when I post a full advanced guide. And there are several in that playlist already for you to enjoy. And also feel free to tag me on Twitter or X at @TheTrueVanguard and let me know there or even here in the comments section what character you want me to cover next. Alright, let's get into it. I always like to begin with a quick summation of the hero's actual gameplay loop. Iron Man applies pressure from a distance in choke points by coating the ground in splash damage, forcing the healers to step up and focus on healing their frontline. Now, during that time, Iron Man is actually best used to damage the healers in the backline, since he can see over the front line without actually having to like dive and make himself too vulnerable. Once a healer is eliminated, he can then swoop in and do massive single target damage by using his Unibeam from his chest, surgically taking out a key duelist or helping to drop an enemy tank quickly. That's how I really like to play him. Obviously, you need to be flexible because sometimes you'll have to, take out a lone duelist first before you can target the back line, but that's how he's best used. There's a whole lot to go over here. Iron Man is only rated a 2-star difficulty character, but he has several inputs that you'll have to master. Let's talk about flight first. Flight is a little tricky with Iron Man. There's a lot going on here. His standard free flight movement is really slow, but it's easy to control and it doesn't make any noise. So you can actually creep up behind enemy snipers and get behind enemy lines with it without having your footsteps give you away. Now, I've seen a lot of people recommend this, but I can't in good faith tell you that this is a good use of Iron Man's kit. Instead of going on long, silent flanks that take 30 seconds to pull off, I prefer to use things like pillars and walls to hover and actually ambush rather than flank. I think he's a really good ambusher. It's how I take down enemy flyers like other Iron Mans and Storms and Human Torches. But like I said, his free flight is slow, but his shift ability, that flight mode, which is called hyper velocity, is very fast. So you're going to use this to break off for a rapid health pack grab or to get away from an enemy ultimate. It's also great for getting back to the fight quickly if you go down and you respawn back at the base. You can fly back there pretty quick to get right back and involved in the fight. But there are two huge drawbacks to his fast flight. One is that it's extremely loud, okay? You will be broadcasting your position to the entire enemy team, so just assume that if you are flying fast, then everybody knows where you are. The second major drawback is that you can't seamlessly go from flying to doing damage. When you deactivate your hypervelocity thrusters, you'll put on the brakes and you'll do this awkward stopping animation. Johnny is a much more agile and nimble flyer, the Human Torch I mean. He's more like a Porsche that has speed and handles great, while Iron Man is more like a Dodge Challenger SRT Demon 170 for all you gearheads out there, fast in a straight line, but not the most nimble thing on the track. So when you boost up to someone to try to take them out, just know that you're going to have to take a moment to do this awkward stopping animation before you can actually do damage. So don't fly right up into their face. They'll end up getting a bunch of free damage on you before you can return fire. And there's a small way to help offset that just a little bit, which I'll talk about later when we break down his abilities. One last note about his flight that is really important to know. Iron Man can charge up his armor with his E ability called Armor Overdrive. But if you're not careful, you'll take a lot of deaths as Iron Man by trying to fly away from danger when you're weak, only to find your thrusters suddenly give out on you and force you to do this awkward stationary animation, and you'll get chewed to pieces. That's because when the timer runs out on Armor Overdrive, you're forced to do a powering down animation. So you have to plan for that animation, be aware of that animation, give yourself enough time to get away before your overdrive runs out, because otherwise you're going to be handing the enemy team a free kill. Trust me on this, it will happen a lot more than you think it will. Alrighty, let's move on to his two primary means of dealing damage. There's his main attack called Repulsor Blast, and then his alternate fire called the Unibeam, which comes out of his chest. Now, the Repulsor Blast is an F-y'all weapon, while the Unibeam is an FU in particular weapon, right? So the primary fire, Repulsor Blast, does splash damage, which makes it great for shooting into crowds to damage a bunch of people at once, and it also farms up a ton of ultimate energy. It's also great at damaging enemies who are trying to use cover, so you can actually shoot, just to the right or the left of the pillar or whatever they're hiding behind, or just to the side of the corner that they're hiding behind, and do a bunch of splash damage to them, and do a little chip damage even when you can't actually see them, which is great. You can also damage the Punisher by shooting, if he's in his turret, shoot right behind the turret. If you shoot in front of it, the turret will absorb the damage. And, you'll whittle down his turret, which is great. But if you shoot just behind it, the splash damage will hit the Punisher player instead. And you can actually kill him off the turret, which is great. Your third shot in the combo, by the way, will actually launch 2 projectiles at once, right? So you go 1 shot, 2 shots. And so obviously do more damage, cover more ground. But direct hits will do basically double damage to the target. It's important. So definitely try to hit direct shots, which is much easier to do against larger enemies like Vanguards. But along those lines, your splash damage is actually a great way to damage more squirrely enemies like divers. Here, I'll show you some clips against a Lord Spider-Man here that really hated me. You'll notice that anytime I hear him diving, I pull back so that I'm hugging a wall. I'm not just going to be out in the open space in the open sky, because I have no way really to defend myself against a Spider-Man there. I'm a sitting duck. So I'll pull back to a wall of some kind, tighter quarters. That's because I want to splash damage him by shooting the walls in those tight quarters. That's your best way to take down Spidey. I'll often use the Unibeam on his approach just to do a little bit of chip damage first, and then bait him into those tighter quarters to finish him up. Now, he got pretty tilted. He ended up leaving his team and camping the spawn just so that he could solo ult me on my way out one time. So check this out. I'm playing close to cover and shooting into his team, and then I see him zip to my right. Now, I know he hates me. He's been doing this the whole game, so I swing down to the door, and I kill him using only splash damage on the surfaces around him, using the door frame, the floor, the rocks, everything around me, now that I got him into a tighter area. And then he immediately respawns on a rocket beacon. I wasn't quite prepared for it. I was up higher, a little more vulnerable. And I see him zipping straight back from me. And as soon as I see him, I boost to the pillar right next to me, because my goal is to avoid his auto-aim melee attack when he zips to his spider tracker, right? So the spider tracker ends up missing me because I use the pillar for cover. And then I splash damage him on the steps for a back-to-back Lord Spidey kill. Spidey's always like to brag that they have a 5-star character. They just don't like to talk about the fact that they get an auto-aim hit to queue up their combo that has an enormous hitbox. Like that uppercut is like, you cannot miss it. If they are in your zip code, it's going to hit you. So anyways, I use the same approach to fighting Iron Fists as well. Just remember not to shoot him when he turns gold, because you'll actually give him health, and then you'll be screaming at your screen and throwing your controller. Truth be told, a good Spider-Man is a massive counter to Iron Man, okay? Not gonna lie to you. I can teach you how to be more successful against him, but I'm not gonna lie to you and tell you it's an easy thing. It's an uphill battle. It's not impossible, but it is far from easy to outperform a really good Spider-Man. You're gonna have to work for it. Now let's chat about the Unibeam. This is going to get you most of your final hits, to be honest. This is what you use when you want to put someone down usually. So get used to aiming it. On the plus side, it does killer damage in a short amount of time. Downside, you lose some mobility. You're easier to hit. So it's a trade-off. But you'll see quads, you'll see pentas in the gameplay. That's just me using the Unibeam like a friggin' conga line. Dun 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 dun, you're dead. Dun 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 dun, you're dead. One after the next, after the next, after the next. So while the Repulsor Blast is like a machete, the Unibeam is more like a scalpel. It reaches 25 meters, which is pretty good, but it means that you'll have to get closer to use it effectively. But we got to talk about aiming it. It's super easy to overcorrect your aim with this thing, and you'll just be sweeping back and forth across the enemy like a toddler holding a fire hose. So here's my best advice. Aim it almost exclusively with A and D on your keyboard, or with the left thumbstick on your controller. You basically want to aim by strafing, not moving your camera directly. When the enemy changes elevation, try to use space and control to go up and down, but otherwise, that would be when you use your mouse or your right thumbstick to correct for height. But for left and right aiming, just use the left stick or A and D. That one change will get you a ton more kills, trust me. But the Unibeam is most definitely your primary counter to other flyers. It's really hard, not impossible, but really hard to hit moving targets in the air without something to splash against using your repulsor blast. Storms are the easiest to hit, it's because they don't move very fast, but the Unibeam is going to kill a lot faster. So close the gap, blast them with the Unibeam. Last tip, aiming for the right shoulder is the best place to consistently get damage on a target. So a lot of shots on the left will miss, while shots on the right that go a little bit wide right will still register as hits. So you can also hit multiple enemies too with the Unibeam if they line up properly. So keep those things in mind as you're aiming it. Alright, moving on to the micro missile. This is your F ability on PC. This ability, I'm not going to lie to you or sugarcoat it, it's not great, okay? There are very few instances where it's worth using it to, over your primary fire or your Unibeam. It's just kind of weird. You can only activate it while you're in your hyper velocity speed boost mode. But remember earlier when I said exiting this speed boost does a dumb little animation where you can't fire back. But you can help mitigate that by using your micro missiles the second that you arrive, just before you stop and do that animation. That way, the missiles will go out, they'll do a little bit of damage while you're doing that awkward animation. There's another way to use them, but you have to be in your overdrive mode, which we'll get to next. But when you're in your normal mode, these missiles behave kind of weird. They don't go where you aim. They do like a little loop in the air, and then they shoot in two straight lines, one to the right, one to the left in front of you. So it won't hit anything directly in front of you. Does that make sense? So you can't hit like one target with all of them. It's impossible. They spread out too much. So unless your enemy is an enormous letter H or an NFL goalpost, then give up on landing all the missiles into one guy. So if you want to land any of these, fly in between enemies and then launch them with your reticle in between the enemies, splitting the difference, and then you might get some decent splash damage to the right and to the left. But now we move on to the game changer, the Armor Overdrive ability. When we go into Overdrive, we get 100 temporary hit points, which is great. That's a recent change with Season 2, but it's going to amp up all of our abilities. Okay, one key difference is that we can now fire our micro missiles without being in our fast flight mode, right? You can do it while you're just hovering. And in Overdrive mode, they go straight. They don't go to the right and the left like they do in the standard mode. They go right in front of you. So we want to open up with those micro missiles a lot. In fact, I'll cut to the chase here. There's a great combo I didn't start leveraging until recently, where you go into Overdrive, you launch your micro missiles, and then immediately melee cancel the animation and start firing your main repulsor gun. A little bit of secret tech here. So the input is missile melee primary fire. So you can, it's right after you hit the missiles, they're just going to go. So for me, that's FV, right? FV, left click. I do it really fast. Although I have melee remap to my mouse, so for me it's actually F, forward mouse button, left click. It's much easier to pull off in a vacuum, but I use it when I catch enemies alone, like this Mantis here. I open with the missiles, melee immediately to cancel the animation, and then start shooting with my repulsor blast, and boom, she's dead. It's really fast. She doesn't have a lot of time to react to it. I use it on this Namor here as well, but I definitely recommend learning this combo so when the opportunity presents itself, you know how to pull it off and do some huge burst damage. But back to Armor Overdrive. In general, you want to be in this mode as much as possible, right? Don't sit on your cooldown for long. You do more damage with every ability in your arsenal in Overdrive mode, so there's no reason to save it. Just use it when you can. The only reason you wouldn't activate it yet is if there's nobody around. You just want to wait for them to arrive. But otherwise, if you're in combat, use it as much as possible. But remember that when you leave Overdrive mode, you will do a winding down animation that will disrupt your flight. So keep that in mind so you don't accidentally stay engaged with an enemy for too long and then give them free damage when you do that animation. It's a lot like using Hyper Beam in a Pokemon battle. You just have to account for the fact that you'll have to rest on your next turn. One quick note, being in Overdrive mode lets you beam down Rocket's ultimate very fast. You can just stand and deliver and destroy his Sia ult, so they can't get much use out of it. So I highly recommend that you do that. It also helps you beam down Hela out of her ult quite quickly as well. Next, we got to talk about his ult. Listen, it's a big boy bomb, right? It's big risk, big reward. I like to save it for a few specific purposes. It's great for nuking a support ult like Luna Snow, Invisible Woman, Cloak and Dagger. One shot, and they're going to go down, and their support ultimate gets removed. It's a great counter there. I also like it as a means of nuking a tank. And yes, I do think a solo ultimate is sometimes a good choice. Let's say the enemy is advancing, gaining space, and their frontline tank just won't go down, and they're a big problem for your frontline. So I'll often wait for, like, if it's Emma Frost, I'll wait for her to go into her diamond form, and then I'll nuke her with the ult, since I know that she can't project her shield when she's in her diamond form to block it. Or I'll wait until I see Magneto use his shield curtain. Now I know it's on cooldown, so I nuke him then. A lot of using Iron Man's ult really well comes down to your observation skills. Has Namor bubbled yet? Did we just break Emma's shield so it has to recharge? Has Cloak already used his right-click spectral form ability so it's on cooldown? You just have to understand the kits of the enemies and bait out their abilities that help them avoid damage, and then drop the ult on them. But just remember, you are extremely vulnerable in this ult. That's why it might be best to go into Overdrive for the 100 hit points just before you pop it. But you will often die while trying to shoot his ult because the charge up is so long and you're completely immobile and helpless to defend yourself during the animation. That's why a nice Magneto bubble is always appreciated. But just don't be too greedy here. If you're trying to get the team wipe with the ult, then chances are pretty good that all 6 enemies can shoot you before you get the shot off, right? So it's better to secure key picks with it rather than try to roll the dice on a massive multi-kill. Quick side note though, Iron Man gets his ultimate very fast because of all the splash damage he does. If enemies group up, you can farm ultimate energy so fast, so bear that in mind. Next up, we got to talk about the Hulk trio this season. It's disgusting. We'll talk about Iron Man counters that you need to look out for in a second, but the Hulk trio has everything covered. You've got the Hulk for a big beefy tank that can play frontline and dive. You've got Iron Man providing cover fire for him from above and getting Gamma Overdrive boost for huge damage output. And you've got Namor's triple squid bullcrap with the green laser squid in there to keep the enemies that counter Iron Man off of him, right? They're sort of like a no-fly zone. He puts them up. A good Namor will make the space around Iron Man really well defended. It's like a no-dive space. So this trio works really well together right now. It goes pretty hard. Okay, and finally, we got to chat about Iron Man counters. And here's where I have to be the deliverer of some unfortunate news. Iron Man has a lot of counters. He really does. A really good Hawkeye can be a problem. An average Hawkeye, not so much, but a good one is a different story. His 2 biggest threats, I think, are probably Spider-Man and Iron Fist. They are public enemies numbers 1 and 2, right? The next 2 after them would be Wanda and Punisher. Wanda you can keep your distance and then bake her with your Unibeam when she approaches because she'll have to use her telekinesis slow fall to while she's attacking you to stay in the air with you, which makes her a lot easier to target because it's slow. But a really good Wanda is good at cooldown management and waiting until the Iron Man is engaged with someone else so they can hop in there and kill you. So yeah, Iron Man has some hard counters. And here's the reality. He just draws a lot of attention. Enemy players, I've found, they won't let you go on huge streaks and runs very often. They'll let you do your thing for a minute or two, and then they'll start to be like, okay, we got to do something about this stupid Iron Man. And then suddenly you'll see some swaps, you'll see some Hellas, maybe Spider-Mans, maybe even Star-Lord. He seems to be a popular pick against Iron Man. I don't really find that I have too much trouble with Star-Lord myself when I'm on Iron Man, especially after the range nerf to his primary. But either way, people will consistently swap mid-game to counter you. It's just the reality that you'll have to get used to dealing with. And healing is a different story altogether. Like, there are times where I'm at critical health, I'm pinging for heals, I'm begging for heals, I'm literally right overhead our teammate healers, and they just don't look up. And I don't want to be mean, you know, I respect our healers, so I politely mention something in chat about it, and I can word it as nicely as possible, and they'll still be like, well, not going to heal that Iron Man for the rest of the match because he's a prick. And then I cry a little, sometimes a lot. But you'll have to get used to doing two things. One is flying to health packs, the other is flying down right in front of your healers so they can't miss you. And I'm not being unsympathetic. I play a ton of healer, and I think it's just because I play everything. I mean, I have 13 Lord characters now. I'm very mindful of who my tanks are, who my duelists are, and I know how and where they're going to need their heals. So I'm super grateful when I do get a healer who consistently is mindful enough to check the skies and see if I need a quick top off on my health, so I don't have to like leave an advantageous position to go get healing. Those are my favorite kind of people in this game, the ones that are mindful of other people's kits. But ultimately, Iron Man is super fun. He can put up some crazy kills and damage numbers in this game, but he has so many counters that I just can't put him in the S tier of heroes. If the enemy team decides no more Iron Man, and they all get on board with that plan, there's little you can do other than die a lot or swap characters. Otherwise, Iron Man is a genuine menace, and I had a blast getting to know his kit. If you found this video helpful, would you let me know by leaving a like on the video, as that's the best free way to support the content right here on YouTube, and consider subscribing for additional Marvel Rivals content. Be warm and well fed, my friends, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.